Don't bother coming for New Year's. My dad declared coldly. I just smiled and announced, then don't bother using my card. That night, I canceled their gas, groceries, and mortgage auto pay and let the cold remind them who was really in charge. Let me start from the beginning. For 3 years, I'd been the family's financial backbone, quietly paying their mortgage, utilities, and groceries through automatic payments from my account. Dad had lost his job 18 months ago, and Mom's part-time work barely covered their medications. My younger brother still lived at home, contributing nothing but drama and dirty dishes. I'd never thrown it in their faces, never made them feel small about it. The money just appeared in their accounts monthly, keeping their lights on and food in their fridge. I figured family took care of family, no questions asked. But apparently, family also meant I had no right to personal boundaries. The whole mess started when I broke up with Sarah 3 weeks ago. We'd been together 2 years, and she'd become my family's golden child. Mom constantly talked about wedding plans. Dad praised her career ambitions, and my brother actually cleaned his room when she visited. They loved her more than they'd ever loved any of my choices. What they didn't know was that Sarah had been systematically isolating me from my friends, monitoring my phone, and throwing screaming fits whenever I made plans without her. The final straw came when I found out she'd been calling my office, pretending to be my girlfriend to check up on my schedule and see if any female colleagues had been asking about me. When I ended things, I kept the details private. I simply told my family we weren't compatible and needed space to figure things out. I thought they'd respect that and move on. Instead, they launched a campaign to get us back together. Mom started inviting Sarah to family events without telling me. Dad would bring up her accomplishments during every phone call, comparing them to my apparent inability to commit. My brother actually had the nerve to tell me I was stupid for letting such a catch go. The final confrontation happened yesterday during what I thought was a casual family lunch. I walked into the restaurant to find Sarah sitting at our table, smiling like nothing had happened. Mom had orchestrated the whole thing, thinking she could force us to reconcile in public. I turned around and left without saying a word. That evening, Dad called to lay into me about embarrassing the family and hurting Sarah's feelings. He said I was being selfish and immature, that real men didn't run away from good relationships. When I tried to explain that there were things he didn't understand, he cut me off and said he didn't want to hear excuses. Then came the ultimatum: bring Sarah to New Year's dinner and apologize to everyone, or don't bother coming at all. I chose option 2. Now, sitting in my apartment at midnight, I opened my banking app and started canceling automatic payments. Gas company, grocery store, mortgage lender, electric company, water utility, internet service. One by one, I removed my card from their accounts. My finger hovered over the final payment for a moment. This was Dad's blood pressure medication, automatically charged to my card every month. I thought about his heart condition, about Mom's diabetes supplies that I also covered. Then I remembered Sarah's smug smile at that restaurant table and Dad's cold voice telling me I wasn't welcome in my own family anymore. I canceled that payment too. Update 1. The call started 3 days later. First came Mom, her voice shaky as she explained that their gas had been shut off. She didn't understand what happened, but the company said their automatic payment had failed and they owed 2 months. The house was getting cold, and Dad's arthritis was acting up. I listened to her entire explanation without interrupting, then calmly told her that I was no longer handling their bills since I was apparently no longer family. She seemed confused, like she couldn't connect my exile from New Year's dinner to the sudden financial reality they were facing. She asked if this was really about Sarah, and I told her it was about respect. For 3 years, I'd supported them without question or complaint. The moment I set one boundary about my personal life, they decided I was disposable. Now they could experience what disposable actually felt like. Dad called an hour later, furious. He accused me of holding the family hostage and being manipulative. I reminded him that he was the one who'd issued the ultimatum, not me. He'd told me I wasn't welcome, so I was simply honoring his wishes and removing myself from their lives completely. When he demanded that I restore the payments immediately, I asked if this meant I was welcome at New Year's dinner again. He went quiet for a long moment, then said this wasn't about that anymore. This was about doing the right thing for family. I laughed and told him it had always been about family, but apparently, I'd been the only one who understood what that meant. Update 2. A week passed, and the situation escalated quickly. My brother showed up at my office, demanding that I fix everything immediately. He said Mom was crying every day, Dad was too proud to beg, and they were about to lose the house. He accused me of being vindictive and cruel, of punishing them for Sarah's mistakes. I pointed out that they'd chosen Sarah over me, not the other way around. They'd made their priorities clear when they ambushed me at that restaurant and then banished me from family events. I was simply respecting their decision and removing myself from their financial obligations as well as their emotional ones. He threatened to tell everyone what kind of person I really was, spreading the story to extended family and family friends. I shrugged and told him to go ahead. I had nothing to hide, and anyone who heard the full story would understand why I'd reacted this way. That same evening, Sarah called me directly. She was crying, saying she never meant for things to go this far. She missed me, missed us, and wanted to work things out. She'd been talking to my parents, and they'd helped her realize how much she'd hurt me. She was ready to change, ready to give me space, and trust me completely. I listened to her entire speech, then asked if my parents had mentioned that their gas had been shut off and they were facing foreclosure. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. She was calling because my family had told her about their financial crisis and convinced her that reconciling with me would solve their problems. I told her I wasn't a bank with dating requirements, and hung up. Update 3. 2 weeks after I'd canceled the payments, Mom called sobbing. They'd received a foreclosure notice. Dad had been frantically applying for jobs, but kept getting rejected due to his age and the gap in his employment. My brother had finally gotten a part-time job at a grocery store, but it barely covered his own expenses. They needed 3 months' worth of payments to catch up on the mortgage, plus money to restore their utilities. She begged me to help them, promising that they'd never interfere in my relationships again. She said she understood now how much I'd been doing for them and how badly they'd treated me. She just wanted her family back together. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but then she made the mistake of adding that Sarah had been calling her daily, worried sick about me, and wanting to help fix our family problems. That told me everything I needed to know about how sincere their apologies really were. I told Mom that I'd consider helping them under one condition. They had to choose. Either Sarah remained part of their lives and they figured out their finances independently, or they cut all contact with her and I'd consider resuming support. But I wouldn't subsidize their relationship with someone who'd made my life miserable while they simultaneously punished me for ending that relationship. Mom protested that it wasn't fair to make them choose sides. I reminded her that they'd already chosen sides when they ambushed me at that restaurant and banished me from New Year's dinner. I was simply asking them to make their choice official and permanent. Update 4. The answer came faster than I expected. Dad called the next morning to tell me they'd decided to maintain their friendship with Sarah. She was like a daughter to them, and they couldn't abandon her just because our romantic relationship hadn't worked out. He said they hoped I'd understand and that we could all be mature adults about the situation. He then asked if I'd reconsider helping with their mortgage since this decision shouldn't affect my obligation to family. I almost laughed at the audacity. They'd chosen a woman who'd emotionally abused me over their own son, then had the nerve to talk about family obligations. I told Dad that I respected their choice and would honor it completely. Since Sarah was like a daughter to them, she could take over the role I'd been playing. I was sure someone with her ambition and career success could easily handle their monthly expenses. When he protested that Sarah couldn't afford to support them, I pointed out that neither could they, which was why they'd been relying on me. If they wanted to prioritize their relationship with her over their relationship with me, they needed to accept all the consequences of that decision. I wished them luck and hung up. Update 5. 3 weeks later, I heard through extended family that my parents had been forced to move in with my aunt and uncle. They'd lost the house, and Dad had finally swallowed his pride and taken a minimum wage job at a hardware store. My brother had moved in with friends, and the family unit I'd been supporting had completely dissolved. Several relatives called to guilt-trip me about letting this happen, but when I explained the full situation, most of them went quiet. A few even admitted they were impressed that I'd stood my ground against such manipulative behavior. My cousin mentioned that Sarah had stopped calling my parents once it became clear that reconciling with me wasn't going to happen. Apparently, her concern for my family's well-being had evaporated the moment it became obvious that I wasn't coming back. On New Year's Eve, I sat in my apartment with takeout and a good movie, thinking about the past month. My bank account was significantly healthier, my stress levels had dropped dramatically, and I hadn't received a single manipulative phone call in over a week. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely free. The doorbell rang around 10 p.m., and I found my brother standing in the hallway, looking exhausted and defeated. He asked if he could come in, and I stepped aside to let him enter. He apologized for everything, admitting that he'd never realized how much I'd been covering for the family or how badly they'd treated me. Living independently for the first time had opened his eyes to exactly how much support I'd been providing. He said he understood why I'd reacted the way I did and didn't blame me for walking away. I appreciated his honesty, but told him that apologies didn't erase choices. They'd made their decision when they chose Sarah over me, and I'd made mine when I chose self-respect over enabling their dysfunction. He nodded and said he understood. Then he asked if there was any chance of rebuilding our relationship independently of our parents. He wanted to be the kind of brother who deserved support, rather than the kind who just expected it. I looked at him for a long moment, seeing genuine remorse and growth in his eyes. For the first time in this whole mess, someone was taking responsibility for their actions without trying to manipulate me into fixing their consequences. I told him we could grab coffee sometime and see where things went from there. As he left, I realized that sometimes burning bridges is the only way to find out who's actually willing to swim across the river to reach you. The people who truly matter will always find a way back, and the ones who don't probably weren't worth keeping anyway. I spent the rest of New Year's Eve planning my future, finally free to make decisions based on what I wanted rather than what everyone else expected from me. It was the best gift I'd ever given myself. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us.